inspire.
Welcome back to Starting Now. I'm your host, Jeff Sarris. This is the show where I talk to entrepreneurs to reveal the unexpected paths to entrepreneurship. Today, my guest is Pio from the Nifty Alpha. And if it's not obvious, this is another NFT episode where we're diving into Pio's story, his origin story, and his journey to creating a very prolific, very successful content creation platform all around NFTs. And we dive into his entire story, where he is today, how he got here, and the journey through video production and creating music videos. And it's a really great conversation. There's a lot to unpack and to consider when you're looking at your own journey. So without further ado, my conversation with Pio from the Nifty Alpha.
I'm already 2.5 hours deep into NFT content, and that's not counting you and me right now. So I guess when it's all said and done, I'll probably be 3.5 hours deep of just pure, on camera NFT content. And that doesn't count like tweeting and just like, monitoring the market and stuff. So I'm not going to lie, I'm getting a little run down. So I need to make sure I'm exercising, sleeping enough, just to kind of keep it together, because I'm still doing both. I'm still doing the day job thing and the NFT thing. And hopefully it's just the NFT thing within like the next 6 months or so. But for the time being, I'm still doing both. Yeah,
I don't know how you balance all that. It is really mind-boggling how much you've produced and how quickly. Because so I kind of want to start just who you are and what you're doing right now, and then we'll just get into everything, rewind for origin stories and all sorts of stuff. But who is Pio today?
Well, today, I'm an NFT content creator. I will be an NFT creator in the near future as well, but I don't want to talk too much about that because that's definitely getting ironed out. But yeah, I'm someone that's loved art for a long time. I like markets and like money making too, like the finance side, kind of. Not that I've done that at some crazy scale, but I've always been interested in wealth creation and, and like literally just like money, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but and that's what kind of got me to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin got me to NFTs. And yeah, now I'm just looking to do as much NFT related content, business creation, relationship building. I'm all in on the NFT space. And I think that it is an amalgamation of all of the things that I've been interested in really since I was a child. And so having all those things fuse into this one space that I can give my energy to has literally been the best thing that's happened in my entire life. And I've basically been looking for like 8 years for something like this. We can talk about the origin story, but yeah, there's basically been like this 8-year period where I've been looking for something to dump all my energy into. And then I've tried with other things and kind of dipped my toe in, but this is the one where I was like, finally, I have the thing to do. And that's why I'm doing it.
Yeah, for sure. When you say 8 years, is there something about that specific 8-year mark that changed within you?
Yeah. So basically when I was like, I always did creative things. Like when I was like a little kid and they asked you what you wanted to be when you grew up, I said, an artist. And I would come into school with like, the palette and like the easel and everything, And then when I got to high school, I started doing digital stuff. Like I started doing like photo manipulation with Photoshop. And then later, kind of at the same time, video editing and shooting videos. And that kind of was the big thing. That was like the thing that I was kind of good at right away. I tried to do music stuff too, because I've always liked music, but I'm just so innately bad at music that I don't think I like don't have any memories of people being like, dude, you're really good at music, you should keep going. Like I don't have any memories like that, whereas when I started doing video, it kind of got that immediate positive response from people that I showed it to. And so by the time I got to college, I had the interest in music. I wasn't good at it. I had the skills in video. I didn't know how to apply it. I ended up, a friend of mine, like a good friend, started making music, and I just like rented a camera and made some music videos for him. And then people saw and then I was like, I really like doing that. We did like 3 music videos with that rented camera, and there was like a positive response right away. And I was like, I think I need to like take this seriously. So I bought a DSLR camera when I was probably 20. I think it was the age that I got the camera, and I did more videos with him. And then other local musicians started noticing the videos. And then I started interning at a recording studio in Boston where I was going to school, and I started meeting different people. My school was right next to Berklee College of Music. So all of a sudden this snowball started where I was developing relationships as a photographer and videographer for local musicians in Boston. And that started to snowball to Boston and New York. So I was in college skipping class and going to New York for 2 or 3 days to work on projects, meeting some people and working with some people that now are, literally A-list celebrities. So, that was definitely a cool experience. And I did that for about 5 years, and it brought me out to Los Angeles. And when I got out to Los Angeles, I didn't think ahead that, because you have a client base for gig work, right? Music video shooting is basically gig work. And everybody knows that the music industry isn't overflowing with money, right? It's not like the crypto or NFT space. So I basically ran out of money when I moved to LA, and I had to get a day job. And that was just about 8 years ago. And slowly the day job started taking more time, and you're not making much money with music. And the music industry is like this, brutal Machiavellian system for musicians. So you can imagine like what a tangential person like a music video director would have to put up with. And so then from there, I was looking for my own thing to do. And I was like thinking about doing cooking videos because I love to cook. But then the amount of work you have to put in versus the return was a lot there. So I was just basically looking for a creative outlet where I could, do my own thing. And then the NFT space came along, and it's kind of been a wrap from there for me.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You definitely landed in your spot, found your lane. And I want to touch on some of the stuff in the path along the way as well. So was the video editing, was that your first experience with an entrepreneurial or like service-based business or like that sort of endeavor where you are your own, for lack of a better term, boss, but you're in control of your own destiny?
Yeah, I think that I always had ideas of being an entrepreneur, but as like a kid, as like a teenager and stuff, and growing up in like a working class kind of area, I don't really remember like being able to identify opportunity. Not that like it was impossible, because if like someone like Gary Vee heard me say this, he'd say like, you totally could have done it. So I'm not saying it would have been impossible, but I feel like when I was like 20 and I started doing the video stuff for real, that was really the music and the video stuff was the first entrepreneurial pursuit for sure.
Yeah. So did you run into any challenges, say, finding the new clients? Because you mentioned, clients like musicians, you were in the community. So you have that network effect, which really helps. Like, oh, I'm producing great work for so-and-so, and then other people see it and it works together. Was there anything else that you had to do sort of outreach-wise, or any steps you had to take?
Well, I definitely reached out to people that were like bigger artists, and there were instances where I just totally never got a response or any acknowledgement from those artists. There were instances where for a while I didn't get any acknowledgement from them, but then after a big music video or after a big project that I directed came out, then it prompted them to respond. And I'm kind of seeing the same thing in the NFT space where, I've reached out to people, they didn't get back to me, but then as they see the development of the content and the growth, then they'll kind of proactively reach back out and be like, oh yeah, I'm totally game, to do a video or to do that interview. But I'd say that the real challenges at that time were, earning money off of the work, because when you're dealing with musicians, it's at that time, at that age, it's common that there wasn't like a budget, so you're kind of doing a lot of work for free. So you had to identify what was worthwhile because of like the clout that you might get or the relationships that you're building versus, when you had to do something for money, but then you're also like creating art for money for somebody else, which isn't always the best look, So I learned a lot of lessons that apply now to my career, if you will, in the NFT space through those experiences. And the last one being the last sort of like challenge and hardship of that time is that, production, like anybody that works in film or video production will tell you that it's a very stressful environment. And, so much planning goes into it to make it less stressful, but on the day of the shoot, it's still very stressful. And a lot of times when you deal with like, an amateur musician, for example, there's not that understanding of doing that planning and preparation ahead of time to the extent that it needs to be done. So then on the day of the shoot, there can be frustration. It can adversely impact the work because, the more planning you do with filmmaking, the better it's going to come out. I mean, I've seen your setup, you had to plan to build that setup out, right? You didn't just roll out of bed and say, okay, cool, here's the podcasting setup, So when you kind of think about that, those were the challenges that I had at that time. And I've definitely learned from them and am applying them directly, into the NFT space now. And that's why I think my learning curve, this camera that I'm talking to you on right now is the same camera that I used to shoot music videos on 8 years ago. So I was able to just kind of, get right in. I got some new lights and stuff, some more modern stuff, new microphone. But I was just able to kind of come in and rock and roll. Whereas I could imagine that other people that, maybe see what I'm doing, see what you're doing and say, okay, cool, I want to make content in the NFT space. There's like this whole separate learning curve. Not that it's that hard, but there's still like kind of that extra step to get in the game.
Well, yeah, there's a lot. I mean, it's sort of that taste as well. So there's a quote from Ira Glass that like when you start out, your taste outpaces your ability, really, because you know what you like. Like you see, people might see what you're doing and they're like, oh, I'm going to start this. I'm going to live stream every day. I'm going to get all these people and I'm going to do all these things that you don't immediately jump to where you are, because it takes a lot to build relationships, to just from a technical standpoint, like you said, figure out the setup, learn how to run an interview, because it's not just like it's a conversation. Like I try to make this as conversational as possible, just like we're across the table, like maybe grabbing a coffee or whatever, but there's a skill and an art to it that takes time to really develop. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And I love that you're applying then all of that experience, the past experience, to where you are right now. So from working on music videos, the gap between to here, as far as I understand, you're not actually in a space, like your day job isn't a space that's really related to the music industry or like video production. Is that right?
Yeah, it's not. When I got into it, there were two things. I was like, I got to make money. That was the big thing. I was like, I need money, because that's the whole problem here, is that I didn't have money. So I was like, I need money and I need a skill that actually will be applicable to filmmaking. Because at that time, it was still just all about being a director, all about filmmaking. And what you just said about like your taste outpacing, your ability, in photography and filmmaking, I can relate to that so much, because I'll just watch like a Ari Aster film, or I'll see, honestly, some of the photography in the NFT space is bonkers. It is unbelievable, and it makes me actually just want to totally give up, because I'm like, oh my goodness, like the skill gap is insane. And yeah, getting to that level of development is incredible. But yeah, so back to the job thing. I knew I needed money. I wanted and needed money. I knew that I wanted a skill that would be transferable for filmmaking. And I felt that my presentation ability at that time, because of the experiences I had on set, dealing with people that had egos and dealing with people that were opinionated, I felt like I could have presented myself in a stronger and more of a, I could have been perceived more as a leader at that time. And I also saw benefit to being able to communicate a vision effectively. So everything that I just kind of talked about really rolls into, in the professional world, one area. And I would say that area is sales. And so I got a sales job, and it was really hard. And it's still hard, but it's taught me a lot about presenting yourself, persuading people, communication, communication more than just like speaking loudly and clearly and having a good vocabulary, but actually being able to effectively tell someone exactly what you're looking to tell them, which is an art form that is often, I think, like, not understood. that there's a way to communicate something effectively. And I think that that's helped me with interviewing people in the NFT space without a doubt, but it's also helped me now when I'm working with my partner, Nick, for example, over at the Nifty Alpha, communicate what I think that we should be accomplishing. So it's been a positive in terms of my development as a professional in all categories. And it's absolutely helped out a lot in the NFT space. Having said that, I'm looking to stop doing it as soon as possible because I just want to be full-time NFTs, of course.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. And when you said, like when we chatted a little over DM, when you said that you had a day job still, you weren't doing this full-time, it just boggles the mind because you're so prolific. You've grown at such a pace because you're producing great work in a very consistent, rapid pace, really. Because essentially, how frequently are you posting? Like, I kind of want to talk about more of the things you dabbled in, but how frequently are you posting right now, generally, when it comes to video content?
Well, I appreciate you saying that first and foremost, man. I really appreciate the kind words. Yeah, I mean, I know from the YouTube days, from doing the music video thing back in the day and studying YouTube and studying YouTubers to try to understand how that whole system works. Anybody that makes content is going to tell you, and I'm sure you know this, you have to be consistent. You know, I appreciate using the term prolific, but like there's really prolific people. Like I look at someone like Meet Kevin, and he'll drop like 7. Yeah, he's out of his mind. He drops like 7 or 8 videos a day. It's like, I don't know how he does it. And no teleprompter, just like crushing the content, you know, amazing performances, you know. What I'm doing now is
real quick on his, have you ever seen his setup from the other side, what he looks at?
I saw one video. I know he has a teleprompter.
Oh yeah. But it is
right.
an amazing set. Like I see that and I'm like, that is what I need to. Like that's what I want. Like he has all his cameras ready to go. He has it's a teleprompter, but it's just so he can see the screen, so he knows what it looks like. Really, it's not like reading a script or anything. But I'm like, that's sort of the dream, right? You flip the switch on in the room and you're just ready to go from there. It's just wild. But that's part of the stuff that you learn, that he's learned over all these years, how to get to where he is.
Yeah, and I think that you and me might have seen the same video on him. In that video, he says that particular video, this particular quote helped me out a lot when I started making content in the NFT space, because he said he wanted it to be as frictionless as possible for him to get content out. Because I mean, he's doing 8 videos a day, right? Yeah. It's literally, like, I'm not exaggerating. Like that's what that guy is doing. And so when you're doing that, you have to be, unless you have a whole staff of people that are preparing your content. Like if you're like a Gary V or someone like that, sure, you can just be the person that shows up in front of the camera and other people will take care of it. But when you're doing one of these one man or a couple man operations, you have to make it frictionless. So that's why I live stream. So you asked me how often I do content. The Nifty Alpha YouTube channel, we do one YouTube video every single day. Some days it's only 30 minutes, or other days it'll be an hour and 10 minutes, depending on how much we have to talk about, how much time we have in our days. But at the end of the day, like we do a YouTube video every single day and it's live stream. So we don't have to edit anything. The only editing that has to happen is thumbnail development. And we've actually admittedly been not so good about that. But I went to New York yesterday, 1-day trip to New York, or 2 days ago, 1-day trip to go and meet Nick in person, Nifty Nick, my partner on that project. And we were just in his apartment taking pictures for the thumbnails, like literally just going like, like just these silly pictures, laughing our butts off or whatever. But it's important, right? And so now what we're doing is we're building out the infrastructure for those thumbnails so that we'll have a whole setup that someone else, realistically like a virtual assistant type person, will be able to plug into to be able to generate those thumbnails. So again, a frictionless situation to be able to put out content. So yeah, to directly answer your question, it's one YouTube video a day, and then 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, we do a morning Twitter space for an hour and a half. It's 9 a.m. almost every day. I think on Mondays we started at 10 a.m. a little bit later because of morning meetings we have. But yeah, the Twitter spaces takes a lot of energy out of me because it's a full 90 minutes. you have to be alert because we let audience members on stage, and it can get kind of wild when you just have random people coming on stage, and we're trying to really do a show. Like, it's supposed to be a show, you know, it's not one of these like, yeah, come chill things. Like, it's a show. And so when you get wild cards in there, you got to kind of police the room, but you can't come off like a big jerk, you know? So that takes a lot of energy out of me. I'm not going to lie.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that is something that I think I've noticed sort of in spaces, in Clubhouse, whatever. A lot of people don't realize that are running them, don't realize it is a show. It's a performance. It's a piece of content, educational, maybe entertaining, whatever. But it's important for the host and or hosts or whatever to remember that and keep everything sort of reined in on topic, or at least maybe not on topic, but sort of going down the path that, like, you as a creator, you know, this is what my audience wants, because it's very easy just to go off the rails and just be sort of a coffee shop. There's a bunch of people talking and not really getting to anything of value, say. Do you do the live stream? Do you do video mixed with Twitter? Because I've been really curious about doing Twitter Spaces and sort of blending the two together, but it would take sort of some a little finagling.
Yeah, like I think long term we'll definitely do that. We have goals of what we need to accomplish right now that I think, not that wouldn't be important, but I think that, for example, the thumbnails on our YouTube videos, like, we have to do that. That's like a basic thing that we haven't been doing. So we have to do that. But we'll get to the point where I've been thinking about this a lot. Sounds like you have too. Incorporating video into the Twitter space. And it would also be a fantastic way for interviews, because I see like G Money, for example, he does his interviews on Twitter Spaces. So it's literally like a live interview in front of an audience, but it's recorded, and then it goes on YouTube, just audio. It goes on like Spotify, like all the platforms for podcasts. So I like that, but I want to add video to that too. And when you start thinking about the technicals of it, and you think about the fact that I think Twitter Spaces has only existed for like 3 months or 4 months or something, maybe a little bit longer than that. It's a new product, and it also crashes regularly. It actually has been a little bit better recently, but I think over time, without question, video will be incorporated into our Twitter Spaces. And from there, we'll be able to really rock and roll.
Yeah. I don't know if you use a Rodecaster, but I've been planning to give that a shot, because we can have this Zoom call just like we're having. If we're muted here and only talking through Twitter Spaces, everything just integrates really well. Just, I don't know. I get excited about figuring out those the ways to remove friction, just like you said, to be able to do a live stream, to reach that huge Twitter audience for NFTs, because it's a special moment in time, and Twitter is that place where people are congregating.
I totally agree with you. And that's actually a mistake that I made, is that I focused more on YouTube at the beginning than Twitter. And I should have been live streaming all of my YouTube content to Twitter as I live streamed it right from the beginning, like every single time. And I had the incorrect mentality where I was like, oh, I should post the link to Twitter and drive viewership to Twitter rather than actually have the video also streamed to Twitter, because then it'll take away from the YouTube views. But that's essentially just having a scarcity mentality, which is never going to be good. And we're doing Twitter right now. It's going incredibly well. You want to be all over Twitter. It's all about Twitter and Discord in the NFT space. And if you can build out YouTube with it, that's great. But it's about Twitter and Discord first.
Yeah, for sure. So I just wanted to touch briefly on some of the other things that you tried along the way before you landed on NFTs, because like it sounds like we're cut from a very similar cloth. You see that like, oh, I want this change in my life. Now, how do I get there? But it's never a clean path. It's never just, oh, you found NFTs, you started a YouTube channel, and now here we are. And like maybe in a few months, you'll be able to leave the job. What other things have you dabbled in over the years?
Yeah, I mean, like, in terms of dabbling, I'd say the main dabbling for me is like, music, filmmaking, like the arts, photography, like it was really creative pursuits. And I framed everything as like trying to be a creative person. Like when I was 22 or 23, there was like a point in time where I had seen every single piece of video content on YouTube where Quentin Tarantino or Paul Thomas Anderson were talking about filmmaking. Literally, there wasn't anything else. I bought the DVDs. I think I probably have them near. Yeah, like look at this. I literally bought the physical DVD of Boogie Nights because it was the only place at that time that you could get the director commentary where he talks throughout the whole Boogie Nights movie and gives his commentary. P.T. Anderson does, so I was just totally obsessed with filmmaking and the idea of being a director and, creating these music videos at the time, but moving into narrative film. So really my dabbling, was in music, video, photography, just developing that skill set. In March 2020, I was living in New York City. COVID hit. And the first weekend that New York City was on lockdown, no one was leaving their house. The social events were completely out of the question. It was a really intense time. I was just in my apartment and I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to just watch TV, or I'm not going to just, watch a movie or something like that. I'm going to make the most out of this time. And that night was when I started going into the Bitcoin wormhole. So I'm not an OG Bitcoiner. I did not buy it in 2013. I did not buy it in 2017. Like you hear a lot of people talk about. I found out about it in 2014 and basically just didn't do any research on it from 2014 to 2020. And then that night, the first night of lockdown on the weekend in New York, I found a video of Anthony Pompliano. He's blowing up now, Pomp, talking to billionaire Chamath Palihapitiya of the All In podcast. I didn't know who either of those guys were. And they were having an in-depth conversation about Bitcoin. And I just listened and I was like, that's crazy. And I started buying Bitcoin and I started watching content on Bitcoin. And over like the course of the next 8-9 months, like come November, December, I became a full-blown Bitcoiner. Really towards like October, November, I was like, oh my God, this is it. So I just started putting like whole paychecks into Bitcoin. I couldn't get enough of it. And then I saw an interview on Pomp's podcast again with the Koch Foster twins, the creators of Nifty Gateway. And so in like October, November of 2020, you can look up whatever day the Koch Foster twins were on that podcast. That was when I found out about NFTs. And because I was so deep in Bitcoin, I kind of just got it right away. I wasn't like, oh, it's like a JPEG. Like I just kind of understood it right away. And I started paying attention to the Nifty Gateway, specifically Nifty Gateway NFT market. I didn't know what CryptoPunks were or anything yet. And I ended up buying my first NFT in February. And then it was kind of a wrap from there. I was totally irresponsible. I put like $25,000 into Nifty Gateway NFTs between early February and late March. And then of course, late March, the bubble burst. I didn't sell anything. So I felt like I really got wrecked, but I didn't sell anything. And I stayed in the game and I stayed making content. I didn't buy Bored Apes. I didn't buy VFriends because I was so shook by the negative feelings from the the capitulation on Nifty Gateway. So I missed some heavy hitters that I definitely should have bought. But I stayed in the space. I kept making content, and eventually all the Nifty Gateway stuff came back anyway. So I didn't end up getting wrecked anyway. But that's kind of, that's the sort of origin story on how I got to NFTs, and really a lot just about me top to bottom. The other thing I dabbled in is cooking, and I love to cook still. And you're probably going to see NFT cooking content from me at some point. I don't know when, but at some point.
Yeah, like I used to have, it still exists, but it's sort of dormant, but a food and health and wellness platform. I'm like a health coach and all these things, dabble in a bunch of different things, but like a pretty successful platform that I've been thinking about sort of going down that like recipe cooking, like what opportunity is there in NFTs? And we'll talk about opportunities that you might see later, but I do think it's one of those lanes that really hasn't been explored to much of a degree at all from what I've seen, which is really interesting. But I just wanted to real quick touch on October, November 2020. It is wild how quickly everything has moved since NFTs have like blown up, because like everyone, like basically none of us were into NFTs. There's a handful of people who had punts and whatnot, but basically none of us in this space right now were in NFTs before a year ago. And I think that's really important to sort of stick a pin in, because if you didn't start creating, like when did you start actually? When did you start creating your own content?
March.
Okay.
Of this year. So it's been like 7 months.
Yeah. And in 7 months, you've established the runway. You've built your sort of platform, your personality as like a crypto influencer, whatever, however you want to look at it, you've built it to the degree where there actually is a path to leaving your job and making this a full-time career path for you, which is, I think it's so important to think about, because how many people were in the same boat and just didn't start? They're like, oh, which the show's called Starting Now. It's sort of along these lines. Is I've had always all these ideas. I wanted to start a podcast like 8 years ago or more of this exact show, and I just never did. And I think it's so important to get started on the journey. That, like, when you see the opportunity, you're into it, like to dive in. And you're a great example of doing that.
I couldn't agree more. And I have the same examples that you have. So like, I did just start when I did the music video. So I'll give myself credit for that. I was an animal. I just started. I spent thousands of dollars on like an unreasonable amount of money for a 21, 22-year-old person. I spent all the money I made on like my co-op jobs in college on camera equipment, so I did just start that. Mm-hmm. And then I just started the sales career out of desperation, right? But then there was a ton of not just starting. It was like the cooking videos that I was supposed to do. I would shoot them a little bit, but I wouldn't edit them. They never ended up coming out. I didn't just start. And the same thing was happening with the NFT stuff. I was telling my friend, oh, I'm going to make NFT content. I'm going to make NFT content. And he had seen me go through the whole thing with the cooking videos where I never ended up doing it. I just talked about it and I didn't do it, And he was like, well, when are you going to do the NFT videos? And I was like, oh, like I'm going to totally do it. And then he said, he was like, you and me are going to do like a YouTube video tomorrow night. And we're just going to talk about NFTs. I was like, all right, let's do it. And he and I did it. And I've made a video almost every day since then. But it was ripping that Band-Aid off, as they say, that sparked the beginning of this NFT journey. And what if he didn't say that? Like, I may have never started doing it. And I just don't even know where I'd be right now if that was the case, because I'm so into this. I'm so motivated. I'm sitting here, talking to you right now. I was telling you off air that this is I'm basically in my 4th hour of NFT content today.
Yeah. Yeah, it is wild. Yeah. I mean, you are absolutely all in, and yeah, you're creating great work. And on the cooking note, real quick, was there a specific lane or anything where, because like I came from like the paleo space, so like gluten-free and sort of what's now morphed more into keto, but did you have like a lane or anything specific that you are in?
I'm into the paleo stuff. I've read The Paleo Cure by Chris Kessler. I think that's a great book. And I think that way of eating is obviously fantastic. My lane, so my parents are I'm a son of immigrants, right, from Italy. Mm-hmm. And so my lane was ancient cooking, because nice. I think here in the United States especially, I think that a lot of food culture is totally lost, because when you think about it, the true food culture of the United States belongs to the Native Americans. And we all kind of know how that story went and how much has been lost there, and how we basically don't even know how to properly use the food that grows here, because, food has been developed literally over millennia. It's kind of the first thing that humans completely mastered, was like hunting, raising crops, acquiring food, and then preparing it. And if you're from Italy, you understand that, because all these regional recipes that are, it's blasphemy to tamper with them at all, and you'll drive 50 kilometers in Italy and it'll be a totally different story in terms of the way people are approaching dishes. And so I feel like even though we have the internet and all this interconnectivity and all this content, I can't go and watch a really good video just like that of a traditional Italian dish made the way it was made for thousands of years. There's always some sort of, BS spin on it that changes something. And so until we've locked down all the traditional dishes in YouTube videos, in web content, from all the cultures. Like, I love Indian food. I'm not Indian, I have friends that are Indian, but I'd love to have like an old Indian lady teach me how to make a dish from where she's at in India, exactly the way it was made for literally like 1,000 years. And that's just not readily available. We can see a bunch of videos of some like modern person doing some crazy, ridiculous spin on something that nobody wants, but that traditional stuff was my lane. So that's a lot. I know where this is an NFT talk. I'm like talking my face off here about food, but I really am all about it. And it'll be in that lane, like ancient kind of cooking.
Nice. I really like that. And yeah, this is just a talk about you. I like diving into origin stories, learning more about you because yeah, you have the daily content specifically about NFTs, but I like to pull back the curtain a little bit and see who Pio is. Being the son of immigrants, how did they how have they felt about you sort of going out on your own? Like you started with the music videos and doing things that are really, yeah, you're completely in control of that destiny, but at the same time, it's not like the tried and true path as you might think.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't like go to art school, for example. It was never like in the cards for that because it was like college was going to be something that was going to result in like a career or like a job, you know. I was raised by my mom and my grandmother, so like my mom is like kind of the main parental figure that I answer to, so to speak. With she's an artist herself, and so she was a playwright and a writer of like fiction. And so she always appreciated she didn't appreciate the music because I think she recognized that I just had no musical talent, like everybody else did. But the filmmaking and photography, right away, she was like, oh, like this is good, and she encouraged me to pursue that. And obviously it got to the point where I just wasn't making money with it. And then she supported me in my sales career, and then now with the NFT stuff now, especially now that it's really picking up steam, I have her full support, so like, oh yeah, all family stuff. I'm fortunate. I come from a creative family, having a parent that's literally an artist. And so, yeah, it's all good there for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So to talk a little bit about Nifty Alpha and where you're at right now and where you see it going, what is something you maybe are most excited for that's on the horizon?
I'm really just so excited about the content and the potential for the content. And I genuinely do think that content is king. I think that we've seen like 0.1% of what we're going to see with content that comes out of the NFT space. And I'm I couldn't be more excited about Nick, Nifty Nick, NFT Nick as a partner, because I recognize that he's incredibly skilled when it comes to content. And I think that our we complement each other in a lot of interesting ways when it comes to content. And then our third partner, the wild card, if you will, the sophisticated art speculator. He's always interesting to get in the mix. You throw a wild card in there and you never know what's gonna happen. So we're just doing stuff from our bedrooms right now, right? Like just like you and me are talking right now. I just can't wait to get back to New York. I'm going to be moving back there in the next like 3 or 4 months and bringing my steady cam, bringing all my camera equipment, getting the microphones out, getting the lights out, and doing like in real life content that's still NFT related, and just seeing what comes of that. But we have big plans for how we're going to integrate more outside people into the content we're making right now. So I really just think that what we're going to do there is going to be really special.
Nice. And you mentioned the complementary skills, and that is so important when finding a partner. How or do you have any tips maybe for someone on how to connect and find people who do mesh that way? Because like my business partner and I, we've been doing this, like we have a brand development agency called Spire. So we've been doing this for a while now, since maybe 11 years or so. And we've been asked, like, how do you find a great partner? And honestly, our advice is find the person that you just mesh with perfectly. That's basically what we've said, because we don't have a good piece of advice, because it just worked out. We connected through another person, started working together, and we're like, holy shit, this person is like the exact... this person is me, but more on he's the designer, I'm the developer, but then we overlap in the middle completely. But we have those lanes where we're able to carve out and really push things along. So do you happen to have any sort of advice maybe in how to find a partner, or even how to vet and connect with people that may be potential partners?
Yeah, I guess my advice would be to like try it out, like do it. just like do it. Because I've collaborated with a lot of people in my music and filmmaking career. As you can imagine, those are incredibly collaborative mediums. You basically have to collaborate, right? Because you need someone to be in front of the camera. If you're behind the camera, you need someone, if you're like a musician, unless you do it entirely by yourself, you need another bandmate, right? You need somebody else that participates. So I've had the opportunity to collaborate with many, many people in creative pursuits. So I have like this large sample size, but I had to do it, right? I had to like take the action and do it. And in the NFT space, I've collaborated with a ton of people so far already too. And you have to do that, and you just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And don't be afraid to collaborate with a new person. And don't be afraid if it's not working out with someone else to, openly communicate with them and just say, hey, I don't feel like the chemistry's there. And I feel like, we should both just keep rocking and rolling, but just in our own lanes and just keep it moving, And so, if I hadn't made all the content I had been making, then I wouldn't have eventually linked up with Nick, and I wouldn't have interviewed the artists that I've interviewed so far. And I wouldn't be here talking to you. We're collaborating right now. So it's all about just doing it and not just like talking about it like I was doing with my cooking videos, just talking about them but not doing them. I mean, if I had done the cooking video thing, who knows? Maybe I'd be over here with Gordon Ramsay in the kitchen, just chefing something up. I don't know, So you really have to do it to figure it out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I always like to say like doing more is where opportunity comes from. Very similarly, my girlfriend, just in the last a year and a half, everything has opened up for her because she went out and started creating on TikTok, like art history education, then led to her getting an actual job teaching at the college she graduated from. And all of these different opportunities that just come from putting yourself out there and connecting and doing more. It's just so important to get out there and do that. So there's a few different lanes when it comes to NFTs. Like you have your ETH, your Tezos or XTZ, and Solana, and they sort of all have their own space, their own niche, I guess, in the community. How do you feel about the different ecosystems? Because like ETH is sort of the king right now.
Yeah, it's a gnarly question. I think that there's room for several. I think that people talk a lot about winner takes most in these markets and these situations. And I think I probably subscribe to that, or prescribe, whatever the word is. Yeah. To that school of thought. I think that this new Coinbase situation, that's literally breaking news. It's developing. I think maybe it was announced like literally yesterday or 2 days ago.
Yeah. So like weeks ago in like NFT time, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's old news now, but to the rest of the world, it's like brand spanking new. Right. And so I think that is going to probably be really big. I think that having these trusted platforms like Coinbase and some other brands, like brand names, have been thrown around already as brands that are going to get involved with NFTs too. I think that that's going to be huge, because then you're going to have the gasless transactions, and that's really important. And you're also going to have a bigger audience because there's a bajillion Coinbase users already. Coinbase has been around for years. So that built-in trust is there. People have Ethereum and Bitcoin and these other assets living on those platforms already, or they have access to be able to get them onto those platforms within a second. So there's a certain mainstream appeal to that. And then when you combine that, if they really do like a good UI and they make it really easy to use and really like seamless and no gas fees and all that, it's probably going to be pretty good. It'll basically be taking what Nifty Gateway did, but removing, basically like learning from the mistakes that were made on Nifty Gateway and then bringing that to an existing massive audience. So that's bullish for NFTs, man. That's going to be bonkers. Oh my goodness.
For sure. And I haven't looked too much into it. Are they then still sticking with Ethereum, or do they have any sort of like cross-platform stuff in store?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay.
But I think that this will probably make Ethereum, because like the whole pitch of Solana is that there's no gas, right? It's like, that's the pitch. So I mean, if there's no like, I'm pretty sure people want their NFTs to be on Ethereum, when they're on Coinbase if there's no gas, because gas is kind of the big qualm that everybody has with Ethereum. And if you take that away, that's a pretty big deal.
Oh yeah, for sure. And with ETH too, that hopefully will be mitigated a little bit on its own, but getting that out of the way now could just be huge for everything. And listing a piece, listing an NFT for $737 suddenly makes it like, oh, now I see how I can get into NFTs without having to maneuver everything around and sort of figure out the crypto side. Yeah. Really interesting for sure.
Definitely going to be interesting.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. So I don't want to too much of your time. You've been at this, as you said, for hours in the space already today. But just along those lines, how have you managed burnout and not completely just getting wiped out from creating as much as you do?
I mean, like the honest response is I just like don't have a social life anymore. Like that's really it. Is like the social life has definitely fizzled out in many ways. That's like a half joke, but it's like pretty serious too. At least Monday through Friday, right? So like I used to train martial arts every day at 7 p.m. I don't do that anymore because like 7 p.m. is just prime time for everything that I'm doing right now. So it's just not possible. When I move to New York and there'll be more options, I'll probably train at like literally 5 a.m. because the rest of the world is sleeping. So it's like now I really understand why The Rock and like, these really successful people wake up at like 4 a.m. and they get their workout in before the rest of the world wakes up. So that's probably what I'll have to do. And the other thing is that I don't work all day on the weekends. I do work in the mornings. We do streams in the mornings on the weekends, but like there's just something about afternoon where I'm like, I'm not gonna, I now understand the weekend construct for human beings better than I ever did before. So that's kind of how I manage burnout. And quite frankly, the thing that burns me out the most is two things. Content that I'm not 100% interested in, which is now basically eliminated because I have just a dedicated show, with Nick. So like I'm interested in doing that show. So that's basically been eliminated. But before I would take flyers on content, try things out. And then all of a sudden you're 30 minutes into something and you're like, this isn't working, or this isn't what I thought it was going to be. That can be mentally draining because you can't just abruptly end it. You have to, finish crafting the content, and it feels like you're wasting your time. So that burns me out. And really the other thing that burns me out is like paying attention to the price action in the NFT market. Oh my goodness. It's so bad because it's like an emotional roller coaster. Because how can you have as much conviction in like a random JPEG NFT project as like the conviction that you have in like Bitcoin, or the conviction you have in like Tesla stock, right? I don't care what happens with Bitcoin because I just have this crazy conviction in it where if it goes down, I'll just get excited and I'll buy more. But if this one random JPEG project that I'm speculating on corrects by 75%, that is like a terrible, terrible thing. So I've been kind of going through that over the past 2 or 3 days because we're seeing this pullback in the NFT market. And I've been thinking about it during this interview, like, oh, I got to list one of my peaceful groupies. I got to like maybe think about listing a dead fella, just got to liquidate some stuff. What's going on with my ape gang? I just deployed 1.3 ETH in the ape gang the other day, So it's like, those are considerable sums of money that I don't want to just let go to zero,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, how active are you then with the buying and selling on a day-to-day basis?
Well, now I feel like this obligation to be extremely active because of the shows. Like the show's called the Nifty Alpha, and it's a market and trade talk show. And the idea, like I have to participate, And so hopefully we can figure out a situation to get like a community wallet going where there's like 10 ETH or something in this wallet that's controlled by me, Nick, and Sophisticated Art Speculator. And we can kind of, have this wallet that we raised money for or something. So it's not like our money, and we can kind of be a little bit more free flying or freewheeling with it. So we'll see what happens there, but I'm pretty active, man. I'm always looking for projects to buy into. I have a solid amount of ETH that I'm ready to deploy at any given time. So that's what I would say about that. I'm pretty active, and it can take a lot out of you.
Yeah, for sure. And then with the Nifty Alpha, just sort of business model wise, are you considering going sort of the sponsorship route, like ads and things? Or like, I know you have a lot of bigger plans along the path, but is there any sort of near term that you might be dabbling in?
Yeah, I think sponsorship is a really clean and effective way to raise money for a product like that, like one of these content shows in a space like the NFT space. The thing is a lot of people promote projects for money. I've never personally promoted a project for financial gain. I've had projects like randomly send me NFTs after I talked about them. And I'm kind of like, can you not do that?
Yeah.
Because then it looks like you paid me to talk about your project. Like, anyone can send you an NFT. So things will just show up in my wallet. I don't know if there's scams. I don't know if when I click on them, my whole wallet is going to get stolen. So that's been an interesting thing for me to deal with. But yeah, I think that promoting projects can get murky. And so we've kind of pretty much almost 100% decided that we're never going to do that. But a sponsorship, like a sponsorship from a brand that's in the NFT space, that sounds pretty good to me. And so we don't have like, one of those yet. And we haven't like gotten serious with any sponsors yet. But I think that could probably be a very effective way. We have to believe in the product, obviously. Like if Treasure or Ledger, these cold storage devices, if they reached out to us and they wanted us to, they wanted to sponsor us, I would definitely say yes. I mean, I use those products. I understand those products and the benefit of them to our audience members. So I feel like I'd be an effective spokesperson for them, if they wanted to do it. There's the pitch to Treasure the Ledger. There it is. You heard it here first. Sponsor me.
Yeah. And the tangential things too that you like believe in and support. Because I've been considering the same. I have this show, but then with a business partner, another like client, I guess, of our company, we have another show called Kidney Stone Diet, and we're exploring the options of sponsorships, even something that it doesn't necessarily have to be NFT specific, but tangentially something that I believe in, I use that connects with the audience potentially. But yeah, so much opportunity out there, and I don't want to take too much more of your time because this has been great. Love diving into your story. Where should we send people to follow along with everything you're up to?
Yeah. So, Nifty Alpha on YouTube. I think we just got the naming convention. So it's like youtube.com/c/the Nifty Alpha. That's TheNiftyAlpha. Then you can follow me on Twitter. It's at Pio Vincenzo. So Pio Vincenzo and then underscore. It's my name. I don't know what to do, man. I don't have a more clever naming convention. You can search for pio.eth and I should pop up. I have a Pepe frog as my picture with an orange background. So you can see that there. And then join the Discord. That's where I live. So that's thenifty.com/Discord. So THENIFTY.com/Discord. And that's where me and Nick, we're hanging out in that Discord. People are talking about trades. People are talking about projects. And we're definitely looking to expand that so that it's more artist friendly. For example, it can be a potential creative space. But those are pretty much the places that you can find me: Twitter, YouTube, and Discord.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, man. It was a real pleasure. You asked great questions. And as someone that interviews people myself, I really, really enjoyed this.
I want to thank Pio for joining me on this episode. Be sure to check out the Nifty Alpha on YouTube, where you can see his daily live stream video and then all the backlog. And check him out on Twitter as well. The link to his Twitter account will be in the bio. As always, this episode of Starting Now is brought to you by Built. At Built, we help you get started online. Whether you want to start a blog or a business, head on over to built.co. That's BYLT.co to get started. Built, your website, built for you, simply. Finally, if you're enjoying the show, I would love if you subscribe on YouTube and give this episode a little thumbs up and leave a comment. I mean, it all goes a long way to help me reach more people with this show, and I'm just really enjoying myself doing it. So thanks again. Well, that'll do it for this week. Again, I'm Jeff Sarris. This has been Starting Now, and I will see you next time.